I'm Danielle, your host of the Abridged to Motherhood podcast, the place where moms like you learn to thrive, not just survive through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I'm a birth and postpartum doula and a mom of two who's been where you are. My first pregnancy was filled with so much excitement, but it was also marked by stress, anxiety, and fear of the unknown. I thought I had everything mapped out, but when postpartum hit, I realized how unprepared I was for the physical, emotional, and mental toll of motherhood. It was overwhelming, lonely, and nothing like I imagined. When I found out I was pregnant again, I knew I needed to approach things differently. I made it my mission to not only prepare for postpartum, but to prioritize myself in the process. That shift changed everything. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Whether you're navigating your first pregnancy, feeling buried under endless advice, or struggling to figure out what you actually need for postpartum, this podcast is your safe space. You'll find practical tips, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you feel informed, supported, and empowered through every stage of motherhood. If you're ready to feel confident, prepared, and truly supported in your motherhood journey, stick around. This is for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the Abridged to Motherhood podcast. Today I have my mom with me. I'm so excited. This is our final episode of the Maternal Mental Health Month series. So I'm going to be talking to her about just what she remembers about how I was acting during my postpartum depression and anxiety and how she went about being a support person for me throughout that time. So thanks so much for being here, Mom.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So I wanted to start with looking back. What did you kind of see as some of the first signs that something maybe wasn't going right with me? It could have been pregnancy or postpartum.
I think part of being from my generation and my experience being a mom and being pregnant and all of that was so much different than it is today. And so, when I thought about this, I thought, honestly, for the most part during pregnancy, things seemed fairly normal. I mean, yeah, there were a few complications along the way, but it wasn't luckily anything that wasn't handled. You are more of a type A personality. So you were doing all of the things that new moms do. You were preparing and you were super excited and, working hard. And, toward the end, of course, nesting big time, which to me seemed all very normal. Now, after baby came, um, things started to change a little bit. And I think the first thing I noticed, you were having trouble sleeping, which typically wasn't a problem for you. So that was very noticeable for you. You were tired, more anxious than usual. Again, you were a very capable person. You handled a lot of things always, very organized. But I could see anxiety revolved around things with baby. And then the nursing was probably the biggest problem. You were just having lots of problems nursing. It was painful. She wasn't latching. We were trying to seek help for you in the lactation space, and it really wasn't going that well. So all those things were happening, but in the same sense, I was thinking, well, this is all pretty normal stuff. Some of that was due to my experience. I had some little bit trouble in the beginning nursing, but just seeing you struggle with that and being very emotional about it, you wanted to do it right and perfect, and it wasn't going well. So your response to that was out of the normal, not only for you, but in my experience for new moms.
Yeah, that was such a trigger for me was the nursing, and because it was so painful. When she would cry, I would cry because I knew, okay, now I'm gonna have to nurse and it's gonna hurt and it's gonna be difficult. And that was like a vicious cycle that I couldn't get out of. And then I opened up to you. You were the first person that I shared my intrusive thoughts with. And I remember we were in my bathroom and I was crying to you and I was like, Mom, you have to take her. Like, I can't do this. I'm a terrible mother. And you were like, what the heck? What do you mean? You're a great mom. But what was going through your mind when I first started opening up about those intrusive thoughts?
Oh, wow. Well, honestly, a little bit of disbelief. Again, just knowing who you were and how you handled things in life. I was thrown off guard completely because I know how much you wanted a baby and how much you loved her. It was very apparent. And as a support person or as a parent looking back on this, every mom goes through different feelings. And so I was watching you, and some of it sort of seemed fairly normal to me. So when that happened, although I knew you know, there were signs of looking back, there were signs of things that you not sleeping and really struggling with the nursing. I never expected in a million years that you would tell me that you can't take care of your child and that I needed to take her. It was heart-wrenching. And sorry, I'm going to get emotional. And I just thought right away, well, no, honey, you you are perfectly capable of taking care of her, and you're fine. You're just going through a little phase, and this will be okay. And I was trying to say all the right things to you, that you could handle it and it'll be fine. But in my heart I knew this was very inconsistent with who you were and what you wanted. So I knew at that point something was wrong, and we needed to figure out what we could do to help you. So I tried comforting you, didn't seem to work, which again was out of the norm. You've always been a very positive and lighthearted person, somebody that is easy to be around. And there was just a cloud there and a sadness. Again, looking back, I could see the distinction between normal baby blues and something else going on, but I didn't really want to believe that. And I didn't know a lot about postpartum depression either. So I just kind of thought, well, okay, this is something you'll snap out of, and, we'll get you through it. But it wasn't that, unfortunately.
Because that was kind of like the tip of the iceberg of my intrusive thoughts at that point that I was sharing with you. But they started, and I've shared this before on the podcast, they started like that, where it was like I wanted to run away. I would fantasize about leaving and going to Chicago and living with my dad and, getting hurt. So I had to be in the hospital for a few days so I could have a
Mm-hmm.
break. And that's kind of how those intrusive thoughts started. But I think, like you said, that was when we all kind of woke up and you were like, I think we need to get some help. And I think you talked to Gary, right,
Mm-hmm.
first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we made the decision to call my OB and we went in early. We went in
Mm-hmm.
before my 6 week appointment, and I shared when I was sharing my story, we went in, you, me, and Gary went together and to see my OB. And that was when she was like, this is probably one of the worst cases I've seen because at that point, like you were saying, like I had this cloud, I was crying all the time. But then almost by the time we got to see her a few days later, I had gotten numb. Like there was just nothing there at that point. And then, she kind of took things from there. But I also remember you reaching out and we found another OB for me to see to get like a second opinion. And as we were kind of moving forward in my care and getting me help, like how did you, because I don't remember this part because I was in my own brain. How did you navigate trying to help me find help? Were you Googling? Like, what were you doing?
That was a hard time because, there was a very dark cloud over this whole situation. Gary being a new father and watching you go through this was very scary for him. Of course, it was scary for me because you were telling me things that weren't weren't normal, and we were kind of moment by moment trying to figure out what to do. And you had a fantastic OB, but I think one thing I learned through all of this is they are experts in pregnancy and delivering babies. And there's a whole nother level of expertise in postpartum world. And they didn't necessarily give us all the right answers. So, although we did go see her early and she tried to prescribe something based on studies, try this is something that should work. We didn't, over time, we didn't have any luck with that. Things were kind of getting worse in my mind because, like you said, you became more numb, really kind of unable to care for the baby. And at that time, I was trying to juggle making sure the baby and Gary were taken care of, but also really concerned about how we get you help in that world. So I did reach out, to my boss and a good friend, and they recommended their OB, who they had, really good luck with. He was a veteran, very, almost to retirement age, and so I thought, well, I'm sure he has more experience with this, and kind of recommended you stay on the same path, and which we did, and it just wasn't getting any better. So that became very frustrating. And then we started looking online for postpartum, world help, and it was really difficult to find anything at that time. I never even heard the word doula in my life. And so nothing like that came up as an option. There were a couple of support groups, things like that, or centers that you could try and get into, but none of them seemed like great options at the time. So, I think we ended up finding a good counselor, which helped, and you did get some help with different kinds of meds finally. But that whole time was very scary, and we felt like there weren't a lot of places that we could go to get help at all. So we felt like we were not on an island in a lot of ways, and that was frightening because we're clearly not medical professionals. So we did the best we could with what we had at the time, but I can't tell you how, again, born out of the ashes, this amazing business has sprouted. Your passion to help other moms during this very amazing time, but what can become a very difficult and challenging time as well for all parties involved. I know we're fortunate that we're very close, and you were able to open up to me, which I'm so thankful for. What I did with that information was go into crisis mode and try and solve the problem. And there were so many roadblocks in trying to figure out what to do with that. And so I'm super glad that you you have some answers now, and you can provide support and help to people going through it.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot, that the 8 years ago, there was, like, nothing. There really
Mm-mm.
wasn't. We were able to find one support group, and that I was scared as all get out to go to the first time. You came with me the first time, and that was probably the first place where we were able to talk to other women who had gone through it, and because it was peer led, and the two moms that ran it had walked through severe postpartum depression and anxiety and were on the other side. And then there were other women who were walking through it and were having similar experiences as me because I didn't have anybody that I could really relate to. And that helped me for a season going there. And then as I started to get better, I kind of had to pull away because hearing other people's stories was triggering to me. It would make some of those intrusive thoughts come back because I would hear someone else share, and then
those thoughts would start in my brain again. So I had to pull back because I was trying to cope through those things. But we needed a psychiatrist to handle the medication. And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's been so many public service announcements kind of in the last few years about postpartum depression and anxiety and perinatal mental health. The pandemic was really what I think made a big difference because it began to rise. Well, why did it begin to rise? Because
Mm-hmm.
women were in isolation. And that was very similar to my story. I was isolated. It was in the middle of winter. It was really bad flu season. I was told don't leave the house because we don't want baby to get sick. So it was a very similar experience to what a lot of the women were experiencing during the pandemic. And now I think just in general, more OBs are more aware of what's out there to use. And there's the new meds or Zuvee out now and all of those things. And now there's more counselors who are being trained specifically in perinatal mental health. Because I did not even see someone trained in perinatal mental health till like my son was almost a year old. I just saw other counselors. And although they were great and they helped me, her training was night and day different in what she helped me walk through. And I wasn't even experiencing it with him, but just the way I was able to share about motherhood with her was so different. So I really want the moms to hear on here, like finding people that are trained specifically in perinatal mental health makes a huge difference in your level of care. And there are so many more resources available now. I mean, there weren't even Instagram accounts that I could find where women were talking about their experience or
No.
nothing. And one of the things you did was you read Brooke Shields' book, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. First of all, going back to the psychiatry world, maybe some of your listeners know that is not something that you can just call and get into either. Even counseling is not easy to get into right away. So here we have this crisis going on, and we don't know what to do. We can't find anybody to step up and get us an appointment or anything. So we were relying on the OBs, and again, wonderful doctors, but they just don't live in this space. And so, you're relying on all this information, and you really have to pay attention to what's going on with, in my case, my daughter, and try and figure out, is this the right thing to do? I don't remember actually now who told me to read Brooke Shields' book, but I will tell you, I felt like I was writing the book. It was so spot on. What an amazing gift for her to do that, because the support group was great. It was helpful in the beginning to know that you weren't alone. It was great for me to hear that, oh, this is going on with other women and moms. Having some of those moms that have had walked through it and been on the other side there to say, do this, try that, this will get better, that encouragement meant a great deal. But I'll tell you, that book, although really scary to read, I tell all new moms and grandmothers to read that book now, because I was completely, thrown back by what happened. Never expected you to go down this road. And if I had had some sense of awareness about how bad things could get, I think it would have helped me just be more aware to look out for the signs as they were happening versus, oh, this is just normal. All moms go through this. And to realize that there's a difference, and to ask more questions, to, I guess, I mean, I don't feel like there was a lack of support as far as showing up to help you. We were we were we're so close that we were together, and we were there to support you, but just knowing that this could go south and did go south, and having some of that information to help me process all of that would have been super helpful. Now, I read it while you were going through the thick of things, it did make me feel much less isolated and alone, knowing that she went through the same thing where she couldn't find help to get her through this. So, if you can plan in a way for something like this to happen so that you're able to react in a more timely fashion and in a way that makes it possible to find, other help, I think is huge in this case.
I think part of, in my case, because it came on early,
Mm-hmm.
that it was at the beginning kind of hard to tell if it was baby blues or something more. Whereas sometimes women, it doesn't come on until later, like 5, 6 months, 8 months down the road, then they start experiencing the symptoms. So that was somewhat of a confusion for us, I think. Like you were saying, like, oh, well, some of this is normal. This is what happens right after you have a baby. And then I think seeing how I was when I had our son the second time, like I did have some baby blues. I remember crying a little bit and being emotional, but I mean, after those 2 weeks, there wasn't that. It was, I mean, I was tired, but I was not experiencing those giant mood swings as much, or I wasn't having any of those scary thoughts. I wasn't crying all the time. So that was a big difference for me to even see what, oh, this is what postpartum should look like, because I had no frame of reference before that point.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
was huge.
I also think that because you had such a hard time with the nursing, you you told me you felt like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, that was not true, but in your mind, it was. And the help that you reached out to get in the beginning was opposite of help. They made you feel like you were doing something wrong by wanting to stop nursing.
Mm-hmm.
I also had never heard of a tongue tie. The baby had a tongue tie, and although it was clipped in the hospital, it wasn't done properly. So we then had to find, a pediatric dentist who could take care of that. And that was very traumatic because you never want to see your baby have to go through something that's painful. So yeah, there were all these different things going on that, you just dealt with. But as a new mom, feeling like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this working? I'm not a good mom. Those are things that can lead to these totally, bad intrusive thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
then it just snowballs.
Yeah, I talk about how I had such black and white thinking during that time. And that's why I talk so much on the podcast about like having that flexibility in your mindset and in how you're doing things, because babies aren't rigid.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what's going to happen with what experiences might come up when you have your baby. As a postpartum doula, I work with all these different families, and sometimes there's something completely new that I've never heard of that a baby is dealing with postpartum. And we could get into the rabbit hole of like, why are all those things happening now? And our soil and our foods and our nutrients and all of these things of maybe why it's happening. But I think, no, we can't plan for every scenario or what might happen, but what you can do is get your brain ready to be flexible and to not take it personally when something does go wrong. I think it's such a mindset thing that when things aren't going to plan, that you can let it roll off your shoulders. And that was not something that I was able to do that first time around. Whereas the second time we had all the same issues, almost worse, with feeding with him
Mm-hmm.
and having to triple feed. And he had OT from day one and he had all these problems in his mouth. But being able to go, okay, this is what we're going to try, and I'm going to be determined for a little bit. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We're going to move on. But there is this level of with nursing too, like even if things are going well with nursing, if you want to make it to a year, like you're gonna hit some speed bumps and you got to be ready to be mentally tough through that. It's so much of it is a mental game in those early days and you're tired, and when you're tired, I remember learning this from counseling too. When you're tired or you're sick, it's much harder to control your thoughts and your emotions. And so things are going to bubble to the surface when you're tired and when you're not feeling well. So giving yourself grace during that time is so helpful too, to be like, okay, I'm really tired today. I might have some more anxious thoughts. And it's just because I'm tired. It's not because of any other reason. I'm just tired. And that's okay. You're a new mom. You're going to be tired.
I also feel like, talking about my generation and how things were back then versus now, I think women, you didn't talk about your feelings. you just kind of, you just kind of dealt with it. And we carry our experiences forward. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to really pay attention to what your daughters-in-laws, whoever you're supporting, what they're doing and how they're feeling, and look for signs that maybe don't seem normal like they are, even if it's quote unquote a normal postpartum thing.
But if it's outside of her norm,
Yes, because you just expect things to work themselves out. And, that's one of the biggest things that shocked me is, well, this wasn't getting worked out. And I couldn't just fix it with a hug or or even let me come and watch the baby for an hour, or
hmm,
this just wasn't working. And then not being in the home 24/7 is also hard because you're not there to see you really let it out. I think sometimes moms will hide their emotions or suppress them to make it seem like, oh, I can do this, or I can manage this, or it's not that bad, or try and get through it. And communication, I just is super important, and just paying attention to signs and remembering that just because what we went through as new moms, we survived in spite of not having help or
hmm.
um, even support. I had no help. I was very alone during my first days, and so it was like there was no option. I just had to do it and somehow got through it. But also, you mentioned, some women want to try and nurse for a year. I mean, that was my goal. And as I didn't have the struggles that you have with nursing, of course, it hurt in the beginning and all of that, but you nursed pretty well. But when you nurse, you are attached to that child 24/7. It feels like, anyway. And I know there's a lot of ways now that you
Combo
can
feed
manage that,
and yeah.
but I felt, you know, uh, uh, I ended up stopping at about 4 months, short of my goal, because I just felt like I had no freedom. And that was guilt for me, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong, and we just have to give ourselves some grace, ladies, because there's nothing is wrong. If you bottle feed right off the go, or if you try nursing and it doesn't work, or you don't get as long as you wanted to, it's okay. And we have to push back and make sure that we aren't hearing other moms try and convince us that you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of opinions, but the opinion that matters is the one that you and your spouse decide for your family.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I had to learn the second time around too. Was like, okay, we're gonna do what works for us,
Mm-hmm.
not what, everybody else thinks is right. And yeah, that's a whole nother soapbox of
Yeah.
we all know that nursing is best, right? Breast milk is best. but it doesn't mean that if you choose to formula feed, you're doing something wrong. And we both did both. We both breastfed and we both formula fed. And our babies are okay. And we're
Yeah.
okay. And we're okay. So that was a good point. You kind of hit on most of the things that I wanted to cover, sharing what you would say to other maybe grandparents, parents that are helping their child walk through perinatal mental health disorder. But I think something that was interesting for us was during that time, because I got so bad, and granted, you were working a full-time job. You were able to take some time off when I needed help, and Gary did too. Like I talked about in my story, like there were 10 days that I could not mother,
Mm-hmm.
just was unable. And then even after that, grandma came and stayed and helped me
Mm-hmm.
for about a week. And then I was like, on my own, figure it out. And
Mm-hmm.
in some ways, I did not feel ready, but I needed to do it. That's part of like battling anxiety and depression is like you have to do it because if you just sit in it, nothing's gonna change.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were working a full-time job, so it was but I was still very reliant on you for a long time to be like, okay, is this okay, Mom? What am I doing? And my husband and you guys, when I was so bad, had to make a lot of decisions for me. And then there was this transition of like, okay, she's doing better. She needs to figure out, and I was kind of pushing back of like, okay, I got this now. Like, how did you navigate that? Because that was difficult for our relationship too.
Yeah, it was. Well, yeah, because, as your mother, I wanted to make sure that you were okay and baby was okay and dad was okay.
Yes.
Um, you go into that, mama bear mode.
Hmm.
So it was difficult. Luckily, I had a wonderful boss that, allowed me to take time off, and I worked from your house a lot of times. I spent the night there. That was crucial. I mean, because Gary also was working and he needed to, to get sleep. So we all tag teamed, and thank God we got through it. And you can do anything for a time, right?
Hmm.
And you do what it takes. But yes, it was scary when you were finally left to yourself to be alone and take care of her. And so a lot of constant contact. We were on the phone a lot together. You had been given good advice, if you can get out, sunshine, go for walks. There was a lot of battling going on in your world, and it was hard to sit back and watch that happen, knowing that I had used up my time. I couldn't necessarily just come and be there for you. That was very difficult. But I think again, staying in touch with you, just being there to give advice when you can, not always knowing if it's the right advice. I mean, that's the other thing. You do get a little apprehensive about, well, what should I tell her? Is this the right thing? Is this gonna be okay? You're kind of worried that it's gonna relapse, and knowing that things aren't normal yet. Your personality had not rebounded to before you had the baby. So we were just constantly in communication, Gary and I mean, that was huge. I would look things up on the internet, which I know you're not supposed to do, but I was just trying to suck up any information that I could find that could possibly help. And ultimately, you got to pray, you got to love them, show up when you can, but also continue to recognize that it's hard to know when you can kind of breathe that sigh of relief and feel like, okay, we've got this. She's got this. I can step back now, because I think that took me a while to go, okay, this is her life. She's got to live it. I can't be there all the time. I can't make the decisions. I can't intrude because, like you said, there were times where we just kind of had to take over the decisions, and it was hard because I was the grandma, not the nana. I wasn't the mother and or the parent. So we just kind of had to walk through it all together. And then I guess organically things got easier at some point. And, I stepped back. But I think further down in our relationship, you and I struggled a little bit with that because I think I felt like I had to remain involved at some level. And, at some point you were like, okay, mom, Gary and I have this, we're good. So that was hard for me. Again, your mama bear instincts are very strong. So you just want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to help. And sometimes you got to know when to step back.
I mean, you don't stop being a mom when your child is an adult, and
No.
especially when you are watching your child struggle. So
Mm-hmm.
it was, I mean, it was hard for me to even say that to you,
Mm-hmm.
but it was good in the long run for our relationship, and just I think it helped me to really step in to feel more confident finally of like I got this, like I'm good,
Yeah.
to be able to say that because as you were talking about worrying about me relapsing. And that was what was going on in my brain. Even when I was feeling better, I'm like, okay, is it going to come back? Is it going to come back? Am I going to be depressed again and not be able to get out of bed? That was like that was a thought battle that I had to work through too. And that's what you were saying about it. It's a journey. Like you don't snap your fingers and automatically get better. And even going on meds, like first of all, they take 6 weeks to get in your system. Second of all, meds are not, will shout this from the rooftop, like meds only go so far. You have to do the work. You have to do the work mentally and get outside and walk and eat well. It's not one thing. If you want to feel truly healthy, it's the holistic approach, which is what I preach as a doula and why I have my Bible study and all of those things because it's not just one thing. And I needed the meds. I needed the meds and in order to get my brain to a place where then I could use the coping techniques because we were in crisis situation. My brain could not function in order to combat the lies and work through those things. So you'll never hear me say like meds are bad because they helped me and they were a part of my healing journey. But
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to understand that they're not an end all be all and you still have to put in work outside of that in order to get better. So I think that's important for women to hear. And it sucks because you're trying to be a mom and learn to be a mom. But I will advocate till I'm blue in the face. Healthy mom is healthy baby.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, some moms like to be around their baby 24/7. They take their baby everywhere with them. And that brings them peace because they have anxiety about being separated from their baby. But for me, in order to heal, like you coming over and when grandma was here, that gave me the time and space. Maybe that's part of like being an only child and being more of an introvert, that I could go on a walk by myself for 30 minutes and be alone with my thoughts. That was so important for my healing. So not feeling guilty about that because I was comparing myself to other moms who wanted to be with their babies 24/7 and it wasn't that I didn't, like I loved her. I enjoyed spending time with her. I loved going on walks with her too. We would go on long walks together. But I also needed some of that time and space to be able to heal appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as you're talking, it was interesting to me because now I'm the support person
Mm-hmm.
for so many moms. And even as a doula, I have to walk that line of like, yes, I'm here to support you and help you, and I'm going to cook the meals and take the baby for you if you need the baby. But when a mom is really struggling mentally, because I've been there and walked it, I also know that she has to suck it up sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, okay, you got to take the baby. Like you have to do this right now. You have to go get dressed. Like, and I'm gonna make your little booty butt get up and do it because I
Hmm.
know because I've walked through it. But it's hard as a caregiver to know that line of like how far do you push and when do you stop pushing and when do you back away and when do you move towards.
That's interesting because when you just said that, I remember doing that. Like, okay, you have to take her now. It's hard for moms to how far do you intrude on what's going on? There was a fine line there, and I would ask Gary a lot, do you want me to do this? What can I do to help? Are you okay with it? Because we were trying to figure it out together. And then in your recovery, which was long, but knowing when to push and make you take over was hard because we didn't want that to take you down a different road as you were healing and
Mm-hmm.
getting better. So I guess, you have to know your own child and how they're dealing with things and work as a team.
So much communicating.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm fortunate that, Gary is a wonderful husband and father, and he wanted to be there and he wanted to help, and it
Yep.
was so cute. He if I was there, he would want to change her diaper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He didn't necessarily want me to take over. He wanted to do it. So that was endearing to see for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
but he was also willing to let me step in and be there
Mm-hmm.
so that we could find our way through.
Yeah, because at first he didn't. I think neither of us really wanted help, and then it was like, oh, well, we have to take it. It wasn't
Yeah.
even an option at that point. But we learned the second time around. Anytime anyone offered any sort of help, yes, yes, we will take it, whatever
Yeah.
it looks like. Because people love to help and they want to help. And if they're offering, just say yes. Just say
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was a really helpful conversation for caregivers, especially, but I do just want to end with, is there anything else that you didn't get to say or any piece of advice that you would want to share, either with a mom who's walking through it or the caregivers?
I just know that this is something that, again, in my generation, we didn't talk about. And a lot of moms and daughters maybe, don't think about what could happen. And you don't want to think about doom and gloom. But again, I just encourage all grandmothers and moms to be to think about a plan if something like this does happen to you so that you can know that there's support out there and places to go that can help get you through it. Again, I can't recommend enough this book by Brooke Shields, just so that you know what she went through, how it felt. I mean, she does a very good job of describing how it feels to be in this situation, and then some of the things that she did to help herself. Also, this isn't something that can just happen with first baby or in the beginning. This can happen with second, third. So
Mm-hmm.
just because it went great the first three times doesn't mean it will the fourth. It's a beautiful time, and ultimately, as a family, you just have to get through it together and know that there is help out there now, and don't be afraid to ask.
Yes, that was really good words of wisdom for both sides. So I really appreciate this, Mom. Thank you so much for the time.
Oh, you're welcome, honey.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the A Bridge to Motherhood podcast. I'm so glad you were here today. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, share it with a friend, or snap a screenshot and tag me on social media. If you decide to leave me a review, go to abridgetomotherhood.com/review. That link is also in the show notes so that I can send you a little gift in the mail. Your support helps other moms to find the podcast, and it truly means the world to me. Remember, your motherhood journey deserves your care and attention. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself, mama, and don't worry, I'm here to help every step of the way. See you soon.